Hello, everyone. It's 1 o'clock here on the East Coast. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Michael Kazi. This is part of our AMRC webinar series, and we have a great guest with us today to talk about a regulatory perspective on clinical research innovation. David Burrow from the FDA, one of those people that really doesn't need much of an introduction. You know him already. Great speaker. I've had the privilege to see him speak and be with him many times in different sessions. David's the director of the Office of Scientific Investigations at the Office of Compliance at CDER, and he's going to talk to us again about a regulatory perspective on clinical research innovation. A lot going on. He's got some great insights, and I think his presentation will probably be 30, 40 minutes, give or take, but we'll leave plenty of time for your questions and David's answers at the end of the session. And I advise you to type in your questions throughout. Don't wait until the end. Don't make the mistake I sometimes do. I think I'll never forget this. I forget it. So jot down your question, and we will get to everything we possibly can in the time allotted. With that, David, thank you so much for joining us today, and let me turn things over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate that. Really too kind introduction. And thanks for having me here today, virtually, of course. I really appreciate it. This is my first opportunity to speak with AMRC, and I hope it's not the last. I understand that this is a relatively new group, and it really does seem poised to help move clinical research forward in a way that very few other organizations can. So my objective for this webinar today at the most basic level is really just to get you some valuable information in a usable format with enough humor that's going to keep you interested, but not so much that makes you feel like I don't take it too seriously, because I really do. My challenge is that the demands for your attention are so great, and the motivation to stay fully engaged while you're listening to something online, the ability to hold your attention is so challenging, so hard. It's so thin, it's so brittle, it easily cracked. As soon as your focus breaks, it's gone, and it's so hard, maybe even impossible to get that back. So with that in mind, I've tried to set things up in a way that's going to hold your attention, like working to understand how we can partner better together, MRCs, sponsors, and FDA, to really help to drive clinical research innovation forward. It's a great topic, and so it's easy to imagine. Just imagine a clinical trial for a medically necessary product, one that has the potential to save countless lives. Just imagine a trial that's deployed on a network of clinical research sites, all using a fully integrated portfolio of technology, a single operational and oversight structure, running the same trial the same way with the same systems and fully traceable data flow. If that is possible, if you can help do that, then I think you're doing something that will pay tremendous dividends for your organization, for your people, for sponsors, for patients, for FDA. Speed and quality. That's the name of the game. And those things are ones that I think you're really uniquely positioned to do in this industry. And so that's the power of multi-site research corporations. Today, we're going to focus on how MRCs can help to transform drug development globally. Now, my name is David Burrow. I'm the director of the Office of Scientific Investigations. I know it's nice to hear from regulators, maybe in outreach at least, probably a little less so if you're getting a warning letter from me. Typically, I figure that listening to FDA on a webinar is kind of like watching a dog walk on its hind legs. It's not particularly graceful, not really very elegant, but maybe you don't care because you're just impressed that they can do it at all. Well, reading slides to people, that is just not the way that I play. So I think we've got something that's a little new for you today. And what I wanted to do here is to just frame this, because what you're going to hear are my opinions. I want to be clear about that. My opinions on how MRCs are poised to do what very few other organizations can. The potential to make studies faster and more efficient. Partnerships between sites and sponsors and FDA, reshaping how we develop new drugs. And MRCs are very well positioned in this space. Hopefully, that's why you're invested in listening to the session today. It's a message of hope and possibility. Now, I don't have any financial disclosures. I am still a government employee, thank goodness, and I have nothing to disclose. But I have been thinking more and more that with presentations, you really should have a different type of disclosure. My mom always said that you need to consider the source when you're listening to anybody speak, and whether that person is, like reasonably reasonable, somebody that's worth listening to. So, in the spirit of innovation, I was kind of thinking about how about we do something new, some non-traditional disclosures, like acknowledging that I am flawed, that I am fallible. I'm certainly not the smartest person here today. The industry is continuing to change constantly. What's true yesterday might not be true tomorrow. I still learn every day, and sometimes that learning means that I'm wrong, and I'm okay with that. I'm just trying to navigate the maze of uncertainty, just like everybody else, working through all of that one step at a time. So I invite you to think about today's session as a conversation with people who are really all united under that common goal in clinical research. And as I mentioned before, remember that some of my statements here are going to be my opinions and not reflective of FDA as a whole. So buckle up and away we go. So learning objectives. I'm not going to read these to you here. We have a nice intersection of like conceptual awareness topics, understanding innovation in clinical research, and some key leverage points for us to be able to collaborate between industry and FDA, and then some strategic advantages from my perspective about MRCs and how to really help you drive clinical research innovation forward. Now, what I've tried to do here is just cover the main topics. Good news is that there's a chance that it actually makes sense and flows naturally. The key, I think, is going to be in the explanation of C3TI, the CDER Center for Clinical Trial Innovation, and how those initiatives might really align with MRC's core capabilities, the opportunities for us to find some common ground in those. So here's a hint. I think that there is an exceedingly high degree of alignment, and that is why I agreed to do the webinar. So one of the most critical things that we're going to have to agree on here in order to really advance this conversation, at least when we're talking about clinical research innovation and decreasing regulatory uncertainty, one of the most critical points for us is the fact that this ecosystem, it's in constant motion. What's true today might not be true tomorrow. You don't have to make the same decisions tomorrow that you made today, but you can't unmake today's decisions tomorrow. And that's one of the best discussion points that we're going to have about talking about innovation here. There's no finish line, there's no end game. Things continue to change every single day, new trial designs, new operational approaches, new data sources. There are new technologies and vendors every day. And that's not really something to be afraid of, but it is something that we need to be aware of. This evolving clinical research ecosystem, it's the very reason why quality by design, risk-based quality management systems, and the assessment of critical quality factors are so essential. Because if you can do those things effectively, then you don't really need to worry about how everything else is changing. FDA really isn't going to punish you for making the very best decisions you can with the information that's available at that point in time. We just want you to maintain that situational awareness, like follow the processes associated with quality by design and risk-based quality management systems. If you can do that and document it all properly, then you can operate in this space with open eyes and your head up without fear of FDA and without fear of things going sideways, like as you get towards the end of the race. Now, this is really complicated work. It's not easy, and that's why we're all here. That's why we all have jobs, because it's tough. Now, this seems like a reflection of our industry to me. It's so complicated, things moving around all at the same time. Sometimes it feels like there's a little magic involved here and there. There are things like disappearing and reappearing all over the picture here. It's kind of tough to track the flow through the diagram, a lot like what we see in clinical trials. And there are humans involved here too, which means that you have the opportunity for error to creep into things. You got one person in the top middle section there losing his head as part of this process, which I'd say is probably a less than ideal outcome. You got people in the lower section down there, like dropping the ball, which for anyone who works, like anywhere, people dropping the ball shouldn't be too surprising. One of the challenges is exactly this human-focused element in clinical research. Basically, like, anytime a human is involved in a process, we have the opportunity to muck it up. That word, one more time, is muck with an M. Um, the human factors that we see here are really complicated, really challenging. And when you have the opportunity to mess things up all the time, we have to appreciate that perfection in clinical research is unattainable. That's not what we're trying to achieve here. We're not in the business of perfection. We are in the business of minimizing the errors that really matter. And you can help to move the needle on that by just having consistent operations, doing the same thing the same way, having an aligned technology and data flow, and by having leadership and management who are really dedicated to supporting both the people and the tools across research sites. And to surprise nobody here, there's a reason that is all very well aligned with MRCs. That's the reason we're talking about MRCs here today. Because I believe that multi-site research corporations represent a significant leverage point in industry, offering those streamlined approaches to conducting studies in a really efficient and effective way. Keep in mind, of course, that I'm looking at this through the eyes of a regulator, and you're going to be in the best position to really fully understand the strategic advantage of MRCs because that's what you're doing. But in my eyes, there are really three critical areas that distinguish MRCs from what you would consider maybe traditional research practice operating models. The first there is the oversight structure and resource alignment. That's because it can help to ensure that the same protocol is conducted the same way across sites. Because you have the management invested in ensuring that you have the proper support for your whole research portfolio. And that's a rare gift. You don't see that often. Then second, the scalability and agility, the alignment there. That's because when you have the same people doing the same things the same way, you can get several sites on board at the same time with a clear understanding of capacity and the capabilities of each individual site. Makes everything so much cleaner, so much easier. And then lastly, the technical compatibility and system infrastructure. That's because you're using the same systems and the same processes. You have the ability to ensure clean and accurate data flow, regardless of the protocol. You have true system compatibility. And so, like, the value proposition is really in these three areas, at least in my eyes. If in fact that is true, then they, I think, represent a real opportunity to shift things towards more efficient, reliable, scalable clinical research operations. And that's a structure that I think ultimately benefits both sponsors and regulatory agencies, improved data quality, accelerated startup times. Those are key themes that we hear repeated over and over, quality and speed coming up over and over again. So you can see the three big parts of this constantly changing ecosystem here. These key concepts all intersect in how we design and operationalize clinical research effectively. These are the very same concepts that support innovation, because clinical research at its core is innovation in drug development, addressing unmet medical need, curing things that had been previously incurable diseases. It's an industry of hope. And so quality by design focuses on building quality into clinical research from the start. It covers trial design, operational approaches, data sources, the essentials of what's going to have to be on the table to be able to demonstrate safety and efficacy. You have risk-based quality management in the process used to assess, reassess, and minimize the presence of error throughout the trial lifecycle. And then critical to quality factors, those aspects of a clinical trial that are essential for the trial success. These are things that I think, like, if you get them right, you're going to improve the chance of success for any innovation and the chance that your drug development program is going to result in a marketing application approval. This is, just as important in routine clinical trial development as it is in the use of innovative tools, but maybe even more so when you're doing something new. Because when you do something new, a true innovation, and you can ensure that things are done the same way across many sites, You can increase the chance that you don't run into problems on the back end, that the marketing application is going to have a clean review when it comes into the agency, like by the time it crosses my desk. Um, so that leads us to the next topic here, focused on the key principles in developing and conducting clinical research in a way that really maximizes the chance of success, both in terms of the study's ability to generate high quality evidence, but also to do so in a way that decreases the regulatory uncertainty. So if you follow QBD, you can dramatically decrease the chance that things are going to go sideways, or at least decrease the chance that when something comes up, you'll be able to deal with it quickly and efficiently to preserve the trial. I really like the idea that quality in clinical research is simply the absence of errors that matter, not the absence of errors generally, because we know that errors are going to occur. Let's just agree not to lie to each other about that anymore. No matter what you do, there are going to be errors, but we're talking about the absence of errors that really, really matter. That's why critical to quality factors are important, so that you know like where you're going to have to focus your time, your energy, and your money in order to be able to really generate that high quality data. It comes down to that idea that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And in quality by design, we're building those clinical research systems, the protocol, the investigational plan, data management, vendor management, all of it. Quality by design builds quality into the clinical research from the start, deliberately, prospectively, and in doing so, it allows those systems to really assist us in driving that high quality data and maximizing efficiency. Now, obviously, we aren't taking a deep dive into how quality by design is done here today, but you can find a lot of publicly available information on it if that's something that you're interested in exploring more. Now, I've already talked about this, so I won't really belabor the points here, but I'll simply say that identifying your critical to quality factors is going to be an essential step in the process. If you can get the critical to quality factors right and you focus that like developing your trial with those in mind and follow the process, then everything else starts to really click into place. Remember that it's not a one size fits all situation. It requires deliberate decisions, focused attention specific to each study that you develop every single time. Each trial is unique and it's going to have unique critical to quality factors, and it needs to be treated that way. This is also, it's really complicated stuff, and make no mistake, I'm just scratching the surface of a really deep and extensive topic here. I don't want you to think that it's just like 3 simple steps, like 1, 2, and 3, and you're golden, because that's not the case at all. We spend so much time talking about risk-based monitoring, and, make no mistake, again, risk-based monitoring is an essential step in ensuring that clinical trials are conducted in a way that generates high quality data. It allows for those flexible approaches using on-site monitoring, remote monitoring visits, and centralized statistical monitoring. One of the challenges here is that we often only really talk about the risk-based monitoring component and not nearly about risk-based quality management systems at the macro level. We know that monitoring is only just one small part of that story. So RBQMS is broad, including continuous assessments and reassessment adaptive approaches, not just to monitoring, but to the operations of a trial. It can include all the necessary steps to manage that evolving ecosystem in whatever way it might show up through the course of your trial. And remember that RBQMS is not an FDA term. It's not an FDA process or an FDA idea. This is something that's aligned with our international standards for high quality data. And it's one where, again, like if you find this to be a new topic, I would definitely recommend looking into it further. Remember, like a network of sites, all under the same oversight structure, all using the same technologies. That would seem like a really great opportunity to partner with sponsors as they're developing their investigational plan. It's a great opportunity to have your voice heard and really be fully engaged in the quality by design process, like end to end. Really deploy those strategic advantages of MRC's structure in a new and different way. So let's pause for just a second and think through the different kinds of lenses that we could be viewing this conversation through, different contexts for each and every one of us, and thinking through how this might apply in your day to day. Each of them deserves at least some portion of your available brain space, I think. So first, like personally, how can I even do this? Like, what am I doing here? How do I go about taking the next step from myself? Then career-wise, how do I manage my network of commitments as a professional? Not just whether I can do something, but whether I can do it well. Then organizational operations as an organization. Sometimes you're likely to feel like you're just fighting to keep your head above water, like every single day, that there's just no room to talk about doing anything better or differently. Because if you just stop for a moment, it feels like you start to drown. That's a real fear. And it's one that we all really have to work through every day. But it's even more applicable when you're talking about innovation. The prospect of doing something differently means that you have to have the time to pause and do something differently. And then lastly, the organizational growth here. When you're thinking about innovation, there's this like institutionalized fear that things are going to go sideways and then you're going to get blamed for it because, you know, clinical research is unique that way. If the outcome was certain, it wouldn't be innovation. It would just be the way. And change can be scary. It's terrifying. And we are a really inherently risk averse industry. The key for us here, regardless of what default mental model you have, it's understanding what you're really interested in trying to accomplish here. Whether the juice is worth the squeeze at the most basic level. You have to understand that if you're not changing, then we're choosing. And we can't just continue to look at ourselves, our jobs, our organizations, our industry, and say, there's got to be a better way, and then just sit and wait until somebody else fixes things. We have to understand that if you're not changing, then you're choosing. If you're not taking steps to make tomorrow a better day, then you're choosing to let the challenges of tomorrow, of today, continue to be the challenges of tomorrow. And that, I think, is a tale as old as time. The uncertainty can be hard. So sometimes that first step is just to get clear about the direction you want to go in. And then that clarity is going to cause conviction in like whatever the next steps are that you're going to have to take. Now, one of our key points today is simply going to be this, that you are not alone. In everything that you're working through as a person, professional, as an organization, as an industry, you are not alone. This is challenging in the best of times. And, we are in a really challenging and dynamic time in our industry right now. All of the other factors in our orbit, it's kind of terrifying. Regardless, more often than not, we just need to figure out what the best next step is, and the rest is going to follow. Now, I've listed a few types of resources for you here, depending on your interest, of course. Resources for you as professionals, many different types of organizations who are dedicated in supporting the people involved as clinical research professionals. We have resources for people and organizations through CTTI, the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative, developed in partnership with the FDA. These are all publicly available and can be really useful. Again, kind of depending on your relative sophistication with the various different clinical research innovations. Quality by design is not new, but it is now and has always been a bedrock principle of clinical research. There are also nonprofits dedicated to advancing innovations in various areas. I would say AMRC is probably one of those. We have advocacy groups, organizations that are focused on a really specific area or sometimes a therapeutic area or an organization or something like that. But then lastly, of course, we have the good old FDA. We develop regulations and guidance. We help to kind of set those standards and expectations for the global clinical research industry, relaying FDA's current thinking on very specific topics. We are invested in global alignment. We collaborate with many different foreign regulatory counterparts, trying to ensure that we're looking at things the same way, that the US is aligned with the global industry generally, both in standard setting and in the review of marketing applications. Then outreach, a core pillar of our strategic plan, is proactively promoting compliance, trying to stop problems before they start, or at least stopping them before they become really critical issues, and then developing partnerships. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about C3TI here because I'm going to talk about that much more in just a minute here. But I will just say that the CDER Center for Clinical Trial Innovation does include many different projects that are aligned with both developing new clinical research innovations and in sharing best practices and lessons learned. So if you're interested in hearing more about things FDA is doing to advance clinical research, I would highly recommend looking into C3TI. It also includes demonstration projects, which are going to be opportunities for industry to partner with the agency really early on in the drug development strategy when you're developing the protocol. That collaboration is really the chance to get alignment early on, so that the chances of that innovation being successful and resulting in a marketing application and approval go up exponentially. The key theme here, I think, for all of this is just that idea that you should adopt what is useful, discard what's not, and create something that is going to be uniquely your own. But the key is, of course, that you are not alone. There are resources available for you in whatever direction your interest lies. Now, generally, when you're thinking about the challenges we face day in, day out, both in life and at work, it can feel like you end up having the same kinds of conversations over and over and over again. I'm sure that this is a concept that many of you are very familiar with, you can identify with. So we just go round and round and round. It feels like Groundhog Day. You're talking about the same thing over and over again. It seems like it could be like one of the most frustrating things imaginable. You're just talking through the same things, fighting the same battles, and feel like you never really make that true progress that you're expecting. But all it really takes is a very small shift in perspective to start to see things a little bit differently and appreciate the larger context. Often we find ourselves engaged in conversation about these things, and we really fail to realize that we're actually gaining ground in a way that we didn't even really think was possible, in a way that we really didn't even realize until after the fact. When you start to shift your perspective, you can see that when you try and fail and try and fail and try and fail, as long as you learn from your mistakes and continue to grow and evolve, you're still gaining ground towards your goals. It's time we shift our perspective in clinical research innovation and get away from the idea that we're just like working through things the same way that we always have been, and start to appreciate that we're really growing and evolving in this conversation in real time, even though sometimes it doesn't really feel like it. Now, next up, as I promised, we're going to talk through a little bit about FDA's clinical trial innovations programs. Nothing too scary here, nothing too new. This is a challenging topic because there are so many existing clinical research innovation programs currently available with FDA. So to start a conversation about what's new, first we have to start talking about what we currently have. Now, I've listed several of the existing programs here just for awareness. This is just a sampling. This isn't all of the programs that exist. If you're interested in looking into these more, please just search for them on the C3TI website. We have programs to advance complex, innovative designs, digital health technologies, real-world evidence, all different types of strategies for drug development, model generation, data sources, and special programs for rare diseases. But even with all of these programs, we still recognize that there was a gap. And the gap was in the ability to share lessons learned from innovations that really weren't getting out there in the public domain in the same kind of way that we'd like in order to really be able to accelerate the pace of change for innovation generally. So that was the next step for us. In the CDER Center for Clinical Trial Innovation, I always get tripped up about what C3TI stands for, but in C3TI, the program has been in place for, I want to say maybe like a year and a half at this point. It's still relatively new, growing and evolving, and it's going to continue to do so as this industry, the ecosystem evolves as well. But generally speaking, C3TI is intended to do three main things. First, as I said before, it's to facilitate the sharing of lessons learned across the innovations that we have. The second is going to be to communicate and collaborate with internal and external parties about innovative clinical trials. This is where we might engage in like workshops or outreach activities, maybe kind of like this. Other things that might not be directly associated with a specific innovation or a specific marketing application. And then third, it's to expand the opportunities for sponsors working directly with the agency. Those are our demonstration projects, opportunities to partner with the agency early on and ally on the key interests associated with a specific drug development program. Talk through what might need to happen in order to make sure things go as planned. In other words, to ensure that when the marketing application does come in for review, the compliance assessment as part of that NDA review doesn't end up like flagging something as a potential observation or violation through the inspections that was just an innovative approach. So it didn't align with what people ordinarily see, but that was on purpose. It was by design. So in having these types of conversations, we really do hope to turn down the level of anxiety, the level of fear associated with engaging in clinical research innovations, because you're going to have the opportunity to talk through all of that with the agency before you start the trial. Now, when you think about clinical research innovation in the Food and Drug Administration, I really do hope that you think about C3TI. The program is positioned to be what I would consider maybe like a switchboard, helping to ensure that the right message gets to the right people in the right organization and at the right time, that everybody has a place to go for questions about how they might be able to best engage with the agency, regardless of which type of demonstration project or innovation strategy you might be using. We'll get into those demonstration projects in just a minute, but like the point here is that as we gain experience with the new data systems and trial designs and different types of data sources, as we get those lessons learned across agency and across industry generally, as we do more of that, then we're going to be able to decrease the chance that things kind of go sideways in the back end once that marketing application comes into the agency. We want to make sure that the review process is as clean as possible. So C3TI handles all types of questions that might be coming about as part of your drug development strategies or innovation conversations. So the C3TI demonstration program, it's going to be a real key aspect of C3TI generally. You might be asking yourself, what the heck is a demonstration program and how is that different from a pilot? Well, they aren't different at all. It's just another name for a pilot program. And the fact that we somehow need to use a different term to mean the same thing, that's a battle for another day. Regardless, C3TI demonstration programs provide an opportunity to work through the clinical trial innovations in a safe space with the agency early on to try and minimize the chance that things go sideways downstream. So now, one step further down, there are 3 demonstration projects that we have under C3TI's larger umbrella. These are the programs where an interested sponsor or CRO could apply with the agency and partner with FDA to develop the protocol to ensure alignment on that innovative strategy prior to initiating the trial. Particularly here, we're talking about alignment on innovative approaches, not just like on developing a protocol generally. So first you have Bayesian statistical analyses. So now, if this were live in person, I'd have a prize for anybody who could actually tell me what Bayesian statistical analysis really is. But since we aren't live, we're virtual here, I guess you're going to be off the hook. It really just means that there's a way to combine existing information and new trial data at the same time, updating knowledge as things progress. We see these types of statistics. We see those things used in complex, innovative designs, and it holds a lot of promise for further exploration. So a demonstration project was born. Then we have selective safety data collection. I can't talk. This is an opportunity for us to partner on different types of safety data collected in a trial, as the name might imply. It's often applicable to oncology, but we can see it in other places too. It's an area ripe for further development because it's really about maximizing the efficiency of our finite resources in clinical research. asking yourself what kind of safety data is really needed for that trial. Then we have STEP, the Streamlined Trials Embedded in Clinical Practice. This is one that's a little bit closer to what I do day in and day out. It's about clinical trial design and operations used in a study. As the name might imply here, trials embedded in clinical practice. Now, I'll take a little bit closer look at these three projects. Nothing too crazy, just a really high-level overview. In Bayesian statistical analysis, as I mentioned just a second ago, this is an approach to combine existing data with new data. It also uses probability modeling, which extends way beyond my statistical wheelhouse here, just to be honest. The project is, I think, in particular value in rare diseases, though, where you might have a very small patient population. It could be a bit of a challenge to get a sufficiently powered study. So you can see the eligibility criteria for this demonstration project here. I'm not going to read them to you. The value here is that participating sponsors can demonstrate the time and cost savings of Bayesian approaches in drug development. Next, we have selective safety data collection. The basic premise here is that we tend to collect more information that's really necessary for our marketing application. If we already know that the drug is reasonably well tolerated, the idea here is that perhaps we don't need to collect the same amount of data that we would if it was an NME, a new molecular entity. This program really demonstrates how selective safety data collection can streamline clinical trial operations, reducing the burden of collecting unnecessary information. And then the result is that it enables more efficient studies. This demonstration project targets late-stage trials, again, where safety profiles are pretty well understood. That'll include approved drugs, things that are already out there, but where you're looking at a new indication or something like that. SSDC allows sponsors and FDA to partner to make things simpler, more streamlined, to inform maybe more broader regulatory guidance and industry best practices. All right. So this one, the STEP project, has a little bit more applicability to our conversation today, but it is focused on how trials can be more accessible to patients in traditional clinical practice settings. We'd like to explore ways to align clinical research operations with what you would ordinarily expect to see in clinical practice. This is another concept that's generally going to be best suited to a product or maybe a disease state where safety is, again, reasonably well understood. You'll see a common theme here, though. We're trying to reduce the administrative burdens while maintaining standards or high standards for data quality. The thing that I'd like to point out here is that it includes that third bullet down, integrated compliance assessment. That's really critical here because it coordinates the inspection activities with the teams that were involved in the discussion about the protocol development at the very beginning. That means that we can focus our inspection resources on just those aspects of trial conduct and reporting that truly matter for the trial. Again, those critical to quality factors, and not on the other, I guess, more like administrative or operational aspects of a trial conduct. The STEP demonstration project really balances the need for scientific rigor with the operational efficiencies, like supporting faster delivery of treatments while still getting that high quality regulatory evidence. Now, the next topic here is one where I know it's a real hot button issue right now, and I will briefly acknowledge that we aren't going to get anything new or big. It's no like, lowering or raising the curtain, whatever the expression is here. It's simply a message of awareness of the impact that AI is having in our day-to-day work right now, and awareness of the impact that AI might have in the drug development industry in the future. Now, one of the key early steps for us in FDA was to convene this public meeting with the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative, CTTI, not to be confused with C3TI. But we had this public meeting to assess artificial intelligence in drug development. If you're interested in reading that report, you can find it on the city website. It's all publicly available. That was just over a year ago now, and we are still learning and growing and evolving in real time. So it's a good reference, but not necessarily the be all end all of AI in clinical research. But then after that public meeting, as a follow-on, FDA issued a draft guidance in January of this year on considerations for the use of AI to support regulatory decision making. Again, I would highly recommend reading through that if you haven't already. And of course, if you have the interest. It does seem clear that artificial intelligence is really going to be something that we're going to have to continue to hear more and more about, to work through more and more together between the agency and industry as time progresses and as we get a better set of experience and confidence in what AI can and can't do. It's going to be an ongoing topic with industry and FDA in the future. These are really two related but separate ideas. On one hand, using AI at the agency, at FDA, and then the second is how industry might deploy AI in drug development generally. Now, we can't talk about AI at the FDA without mentioning our very own Disney princess, Elsa. See, Elsa joined the agency just this summer. We had a new release of an AI tool, a generative AI tool that is named Elsa at FDA. And you've probably seen this in these trade press, the stories that you've seen out in the public domain. The platform is called Elsa, and while it might stand for something, I have no idea what it actually stands for. The headlines have been all over the news, and they have some real, true, accurate information and some that is more like speculative about how it could be used in the future. So FDA has continued to refine Elsa over the course of time here. It continues to evolve in real time. We all understand that about AI. So the way that it was used a month ago is probably not going to be the way that it's going to be used a month from now. But I'd like to pause here and address three topics or discussions, issues that we've heard about Elsa in the public domain. The first is about Elsa as a review and decision-making tool. A lot of these articles make it seem like Elsa is now serving as a full member of the review team. That is not the case, at least not yet. I would like to consider Elsa as like an intern at FDA. We're kind of assessing how she might be able to make life easier on our FTEs, working to train her to be able to do different things in the future. But right now, rest assured, it's still people with beating hearts doing the review of marketing applications. Elsa is not doing this work on her own. We have to be really cautious because we know Elsa can make things up. They're called hallucinations when AI presents something as being true, even when they present resources and references to support the contention that those things are true, but those references then end up turning out to be made up too. So we have to be cautious, not giving our intern too much responsibility all at once. The second thing here is that we have to remember that Elsa is still growing. She's not a constant. I view Elsa maybe as like a temperamental teenager. She can help, but you got to keep an eye on her. She's still learning, so the answer to a single prompt could be different today than it is tomorrow. And we need to be aware of that it's not set in stone. It needs human influence to make sure that the outcome of our temperamental teenage intern is still reliable. And the third is that Elsa is not going to be a replacement for FDA staff. Just hard no. She can make life easier, but she's not replacing the physicians, pharmacists, lawyers, scientists, not replacing our current FDA staff who are involved in these regulatory review responsibilities. We are exploring what might be useful, developing our own understanding of what is not, and continuing to revise how we view Elsa's role in our day-to-day work generally. Now, I have to say, I am certain that sponsors are looking for organizations just like yours who can do what you can do at scale. So today really is a gift. We've got some parts of this conversation that we can unwrap here, putting a bow on some things, presents for all of you. And we've also got a webinar to wrap up, which is a gift from me. So now, remember that I shared this earlier about these three critical areas that distinguish MRCs from traditional research practice operating models. So here we are, ready to take the next step in that theme. I really do believe that MRCs are uniquely positioned for clinical trial innovation. You got centralized oversight and management that enables simultaneous implementation of new tools and systems. You have structure that supports scalability and agility, poised to help pilot innovations across the network, sharing knowledge and best practices across the whole organization. You got resource management for MRCs, hypothetically, to quickly deploy changes when necessary, accelerating adoption of innovations and new clinical trial approaches. You have standardized operations, different standardized protocol interpretations, like quality systems, all things that are really essential in maintaining data integrity. That unified technology platform also positions MRCs really to seamlessly incorporate new things like decentralized platforms and new data sources. And so consistency and coordination across the network allows for incredible savings and efficiencies, at least in my eyes. You can take that for what it is. Again, a lot of this is my opinion based on what I understand about how MRCs operate. MRCs offer this standardized, scalable solution across multiple sites, which gives them, or I guess gives you, significant leverage because you're capable of delivering consistent results at scale. That's a key point. I believe that sponsors are very interested in organizations that can deliver rapid site activation, standardized data quality, integrated data systems, exactly the value proposition that MRCs are poised to deliver. And hopefully, again, considering the source, hopefully that will position MRCs to really be what I would consider like preferred partners for sponsors looking to implement any type of innovative clinical trial approach. And so all the way back around, my hope that MRCs and sponsors can really leverage quality by design as a driver of innovation. I believe that MRCs are really uniquely positioned in this space by virtue of your structure. So together, using QBD approaches and the C3TI resources, those demonstration projects and the lessons learned, I think we can really build quality into clinical research from the start and decrease that regulatory uncertainty. We could take advantage of FDA initiatives here, all of those programs that I listed, to increase clarity and decrease regulatory uncertainty. And lastly, I really do believe that there is tremendous alignment between industry's interests, FDA's objectives, and MRC's strategic position in clinical research generally. So with that, I will say thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to share this time with you. I hope it wasn't too dry for a Wednesday afternoon. I know I ran just a little long there. I will pause and happy to answer any questions that I can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David. An excellent presentation. So many encouraging things you said there. It's incumbent, I think, on the multi-site industry to take advantage of these opportunities to advance clinical trials to the benefit of patients and everyone. But there's such great opportunity here. We did get a couple questions in. I'm going to, as the questions come in, I'm going to put on my journalist hat and flip it around a little bit. I'm going to ask a question that's got a slightly, I don't want to say negative flavor, but multi-sites have these amazing capabilities. Some of it's realized, some of it's potential. What should they avoid as they evolve? What would concern you to squander some of these advantages?
The keys are the things that I mentioned in the talk here. It's about the standardized technology, the ability to have a clear data flow across sites for a specific trial. And the one that's going to come up for me 99 times out of 100 is ensuring that that same protocol is operationalized the same way across all of the sites in your network. The things that come up that erode the foundation of quality in clinical research are when you have a protocol that is deployed different ways across different sites. Protocol language generally stinks. Like protocol language, you see the words should and may in protocols all the time. The result for that is like if you have 100 sites, a third of them could view should as a must. A third of them could view should as, well, if I feel like it, I will. And a third of
Fine.
them
Yeah.
could view should as like, well, if it's not a must, then I'm not going to do it. But that means that when the data comes into the agency, it's a challenge to ensure that that is interpretable, that we know that the clinical trial was deployed the same way. And one of the very best value propositions for multi-site research corporations is that you have the ability to ensure that all of your sites are operationalizing that trial the same way, interpreting the should as a must and just having that be that, because then you know that all of the data from all your sites are going to be interpretable in the same way.
Great. A couple questions have come in kind of related. First one is kind of a general question. What's the best way to communicate with FDA? Should I be looking for a point person?
It depends on what you want to talk about. If it's about a specific marketing application or a specific IND, a specific drug development program that's already mid-flight, your RPM, your regulatory project manager with the individual division, is going to be your best contact. If you're looking at starting from scratch and like how you can develop a protocol, a clinical investigation from scratch using QBD and all the approaches that we talked about here, how to make sure that it is focused on the critical to quality factors and that FDA has a shared understanding and all of that. Reaching out to that C3TI email address, that switchboard function that I mentioned is really valuable. And it's something that hadn't existed before we stood up C3TI last year. So if it's like early stage, I would recommend using the C3TI email address. If it's like something that's in flight, your RPM is going to be the way to go.
Okay. Now, speaking of C3TI, one of the questions that came in is how can AMRC support C3TI projects?
Yeah, it's a great question that I don't have an awesome answer for, because the applicants to a C3TI demonstration project are going to be the sponsors. So what I would really like to have happen in a magic wand kind of situation would be for a sponsor to partner with a multi-site research corporation on a very specific clinical trial innovation. And the business case, the value proposition there is exactly what we talked about. It's the consistency in operations and the interoperability of data. And I think that there is going to be an appetite from sponsors to be able to partner with organizations just like yours to be able to use your structure to ensure that those innovations are going to be fruitful. So like I don't think that an MRC would really be an applicant for a demonstration project, but if you were a partner with a sponsor, I think that that's something that really has legs.
Okay, interesting. Now, you talked about AI earlier and talking about we're kind of in the awareness phase and dealing with Elsa as a bright, precocious teenager.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how much you can say about this, but somebody has asked, are there any AI guidances or technology kind of guidances looming? Is there any more direction coming from the FDA? They didn't give a time frame, but can you talk about is anything in the hopper?
I don't know. And if I
Okay,
did know, I wouldn't be able to say anything before it was public
fair enough.
knowledge. But just given the importance of AI as a tool moving forward, I have to imagine that it's going to be an ongoing conversation. I just don't know when the next um, card is going to be played, or I don't know, whatever the expression might be.
Right. Okay. Great. Fantastic. Well, I think that's we've addressed the questions. Yeah, we've addressed. Yeah, a couple were similar questions. Such a great presentation, David. Again, very encouraging. I just the things you said about it's incumbent now. It's the industry's responsibility to take advantage of or leverage these advantages,
Hmm.
or these strengths to do better better clinical trials. Do you have any would like to make closing remarks, and then we can let folks go on with their days and elevating clinical trials?
Well, if you can't tell by my remarks here, I really think that MRCs are positioned perfectly to be able to do some fantastic things in clinical research, not just in innovations, but in operationalizing trials that need to be done quick, and done well. So, like, I see tremendous value in these organizations, and I would be happy to work with you all in any way that might be possible in the future. So please keep FDA in mind, keep me in mind, and I look forward to the next opportunity to work with you all.
Fantastic. Onward and upward for all of us. I want to thank you all for joining us for this great session. I want to thank David for these insights and for his enthusiastic support. We're all in this together to make clinical trials better for everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll have another webinar for you in a month or so in our continuing ongoing series. We'd love to get your ideas on topics you might like covered. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.